I really loved all the questions that you had. I was reading through the sheet and I told my husband, I said, man, this girl is made for being a podcast host. This is awesome. So,
I watch Dax Shepard's podcast, Armchair
oh
Experts,
yeah.
and I love the way that he does it. And I'm like, I want those kind of conversations, but in the book community.
Yeah. Yeah. They're definitely needed. I think hearing, you can pick up a book anywhere, but actually hearing the author's story behind the book, why they decided to write it is so much better.
Yeah. And I think that this is the best way to like people come on and they want to go onto podcasts and they want to talk all about their book and they want to talk about the prose and the plot and all this other stuff. And it's like you realize you're gonna catch more people, you're gonna find more readers when they are like emotionally connected to you.
Yes, absolutely. It's huge when they feel like, oh, I went through something similar and they feel like they have that connection, then yeah, absolutely. That is huge.
You're listening to Lemon's Listening Library. Discover the story behind the stories with unique and raw conversations from the people who make your favorite books a reality.
Welcome to this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. I am your host, Randie Lemons, a fantasy author, or RL Rose, to those of you in the romance community. Today, we have an amazing guest that I cannot wait to introduce to you. But first, as always, the boring housekeeping stuff. But I promise it's worth it, I swear. All right, so I would like to remind everyone to head over to our YouTube channel and comment on each episode that you listen to or review us on your chosen podcast platform. We are on all of them. It is one of the most helpful ways that you can support our show. We also have advertising spots available where we create commercials and broadcast them across to all of our platforms, as well as give you the commercials to use however you see fit. If you guys would like more information on that, please email us at lemonslisteninglibrary@gmail.com and we'll get you hooked up on that information. Lastly, go follow us on all social media platforms. Again, you can find us on all of them by searching Lemon's Listening Library and, check out what we've got coming up and our past podcasts that we've interviewed. So I am so excited about our guest today. I have been thinking about the questions all morning, and I'm so excited to jump into these with her and introduce you to her. So, Katelyn, would you tell our guests a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I am Katelyn Pfeiffer. Let's see a little bit about myself. I will be turning 40 this year. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I
Woohoo!
know. I am a stay-at-home mom with two littles. I have a soon-to-be 4-year-old and a soon-to-be 2-year-old. I'm married to a wonderful man who he's incredible. He sacrifices so much so we can be here. He's also a pastor at a local church. So I'm also a church wife as well as being a pastor's kid. So I'm on the other side of that. Avid reader. I love all things crafty. And last year, I became a published author. So I've got that little hat. I know, yay! That little
Yes.
hat to wear too. Published my debut book in my dystopian series. And the second book comes out this summer. So
Yes.
I know, less than
I
a year
love
later,
it.
I'll have another book out. So we also have 3 cats. I love nature and animals and all things creative and food. I also love food. I love cooking and eating as well. So kind of go hand in hand. But
Gotta fuel the body in all aspects. Fuel the creativity, but
yeah.
also fuel the tummy.
Yep. I'm also a complete and total unashamed coffee addict. I probably drink coffee all day long. And the running joke is I need to drink more water. And my response is always there's water in coffee. So that is that is just
You are Lorelai Gilmore in
I am
reincarnate. I
Laura. I
love
love
it.
her. I love the Gilmore Girls. That's one of my favorite TV shows. So yeah, yeah.
I just rewatched that whole series with my daughter not that long ago. It was an interesting experience.
Good. It's so good. I can't wait.
Watching her go from Team Dean to Team Jess to Team Logan to back to Team Jess. It's like, oh yeah.
I remember those days when fear of missing out, man. Like total
Right.
FOMO. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are a pastor's kid turned pastor's wife, mother of two, furry mother, and now author. That is an interesting journey to go through. But what was it like growing up in that environment, and how did that shape your writing?
Yeah. So, growing up in the church, I absolutely loved it. So I loved being in church. I loved being in youth groups. Church retreats were the thing that I looked forward to so much, especially the ski retreat. That was my favorite. If I had to do any one retreat, hands down, it was that. And I definitely had my rebellion stage. I think every pastor's kid goes through their own rebellion stage. Some are very quiet. Mine was more internal and quiet. Some are just very like out there and kind of in your face about it. But quite a few years ago, I was living in Seattle. My mom had died of cancer and I was living out there, and I was just trying to kind of reconnect with myself, reconnect with my faith, and reconnect with who I was without my mom. I was 24 when she passed. So I was really, really young, and didn't really know what to do with myself or what I was going to do with my life. I tried teaching because my mom was a reading specialist, and I thought maybe I want to be a teacher, and got into grad school, got into a great graduate school program out there, started day one, and every inch of my body screamed, no, this is not what I'm supposed to do. So I stuck out grad school for like 3 months, ended up about $10,000 in debt from those 3 months. And just, I met with my advisor and I just said, this is not for me. I can't, I'm not going to spend 2 years in a program knowing that I don't want to do this. And they were very gracious, but I then spent I still stayed in Seattle for 2 years and just tried to figure things out, came back, got reconnected with my faith because I had walked away from the Lord for a little bit during that time, just in grieving and figuring things out. And then in late 2017, I just started getting word from the Lord and from a lot of other people that there was a book that I was going to write. And I was like, okay. I was terrible in English. I could not tell you an adjective from a pronoun, from a verb, from any of those things. Like, how am I going to be a writer? And I mean, I'm a multiple concussion survivor. I've had 13. Like, my brain just
Oh
got,
my
yeah,
gosh.
I've had 13. One of them ended me up in the hospital. But I was just like, my brain doesn't, like, I can barely even remember what I had for breakfast. How am I going to write a book? And then in 2018, right at the end of January of 2018, so almost 7 years ago now, I had this dream that was just crazy and full sensory, and I woke up, and I mean, it was more vivid than just everyday waking life, and I just was like, that was the craziest thing I have ever experienced in my life. I can still remember all the smells. I can still remember the touch and the sounds and the characters and how everything felt and the grittiness of it. And I couldn't get the dream out of my head. And so I knew from my walk with the Lord, if there's something that I cannot get out of my head, there's probably a message there. And so I prayed, and God said it's a book. And so I wrote the dream down, and when I read it back to myself, I went, oh, cool. You gave me 5 books to write, not just one book to write. So it's kind of a long story in answer to your question, but my faith has always been very integral to my writing because it started with this dream that God gave me. And it really started, probably my writing journey really started at birth because my mom is a reading specialist. She was reading books to us from day one, probably in the womb. She was reading books to us. And I was reading the Iliad and the Odyssey for my 6th grade summer reading going into 7th grade. And that was the only thing that I read that summer. And I was reading Shakespeare and just everything I could get my hands on. And so I think that really has impacted my writing in the way that I approach scenes. I like to write very vividly, but my faith is, it's a big part of why I write because it's what God called me to do. And I can't say no to that.
Right, yeah. So I heard on another podcast, they were talking about how when you ask the higher power to, give you answers and things like that, and then just out of nowhere you have like an idea, or you have, something kind of pop in your head, where it's you didn't think, like you didn't directly think
Yeah.
about it, you weren't actively pondering this question, but it just comes to you. It's like, how can you just take all of the credit for that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's something that just either is subconscious or, you know kind of pushed through, I guess. What am I trying to say? Shown to you or revealed to you or whatever, like, hey, look at this, here's a path, here's an option, here's something, here's an answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something that you can't ever get away from, because once it's
Yeah.
there, and I'm the kind of person that I try to live life without regrets, but also a little bit cautiously. I think if you live life completely without regrets, you can make some pretty bad decisions. And caution is okay, but when I had this dream and I wrote it out, I just knew I had to write this book. And I just had to get this out. We froze there for a minute.
Are you still there?
Hold on. Ooh,
He kind of froze on my end to where I can't hear you as well.
are you still? Oh, there you are.
Oh, okay, I can hear you
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
What was the last thing I said?
I just heard yeah, I just heard you saying if you live life without
Oh,
regrets.
yeah. So if you, I like to live life without regrets, but also with caution, because I think if you live life completely without regret, you can end up probably making some mistakes and getting into some hot water. So a little bit of caution is good. However, when the dream was given to me and when I realized it was a book, I had to write it. And the first draft of the book I wrote in 3 months, completely wrote it in 3 months. And I even that was including character development. And as I started writing out the characters, they became real people. Like I could hear their
Yeah.
voices. And I remember when I finished writing the first draft of the book, I actually slipped almost into a mini depression, because I'm like, wait, I'm not in that world anymore. I'm not with these people that I've been
Yeah.
with every single day for hours on end for 3 months. And I actually missed my characters and I missed that world. And I just think that when you do ask the Lord for direction on something and he gives it to you, that we obviously have free will. It's our choice to go that way or not, but I think it always sticks with you. And the one thing I never wanted to do was to have this amazing idea for a book and never see where it could go. And
Right. Yeah.
here I am 7 years later with a publisher and two books coming out, and a third and a fourth and a fifth, and then other books being ready to be written, and just this incredible journey that we're on. So it's a and anything the Lord gives you, the Lord will equip you to do. So I don't have a writing degree. I didn't go to school. I went to school for photography and minor in art history. So I don't have an English degree. I'm not agented or anything, but I'm here and I'm doing it, and I'm doing it hopefully with grace.
Right.
hopefully
Yeah.
hopefully doing it well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that people, humans, our drive and our passions are like, if you find a passion and you find the thing that is just lighting you on fire, getting you excited about it, there's no limit to your capabilities on that. Like, if you believe in yourself, and that's another thing too, is people can tell you all day long. You can have outside sources. You can have, this idea of what you should do. But if it's not what you believe you should be doing, and if it's not what you're passionate about, you're going to burn out hard. And it just listening to yourself, figuring out, first off, you have to figure out what you want to do, and a lot of times you have to do that by trial and
Mhm,
error of what you don't enjoy doing.
mhm.
And I know you mentioned, you went through your rough patch or your patch where you were like just testing stuff out, and that is to figure out what it is you do want to do. You got to try out the things you don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with trying something out and it not working. And I tell my son, he's 4, and he gets so frustrated when he tries to do something the first time and it's not perfect, because he sees me, right? He sees me, using scissors and cutting, and I have to remind him, baby, like, you're 4. I'm 10 times your age. I've been doing this a lot longer than you have. And so mommy's going to be really good at it. But I can guarantee you the first time that I did it, I wasn't very good at it. And it's the same way with anything. The first time we try it, we're probably not going to be the best at it. We can't compare ourselves to people who are experts in it because that's not fair to us. And then you end up feeling a failure and you never want to do it again. And so I'm constantly telling my son, it's okay to fail. If you
Yeah.
fail, then you have just learned how not to do something. And so then if we're going to
Yes.
continue trying, like kicking a soccer ball, the first time you kick it, you're going to fail. But that's okay because now you've learned maybe I shouldn't kick it that way. Maybe I should kick it this way. And then we keep trying. And then who knows, you could grow up to be the next soccer phenom. But you won't ever get there if you don't try. And if you just let failure sit in and you never try to overcome that. I think it was Edison failed like 300 times to make the light bulb before he actually created
Yeah.
it. And so if you think of that, like we use light bulbs every single day, we don't even think about it. But it took him 300 tries to get to what we use every day that companies now all over the world recreate. If he had
Yeah.
stopped at the first time, we might still have a light bulb, but it would have taken a lot longer. And he would have never been credited with creating the light bulb. So,
So did you know I actually believe that someone else created the
oh,
light
was
bulb
it?
with him, but yeah, and I can't remember the name of him, but I do believe that someone else created the light bulb with him, and then because he was the more famous, more known one, he became the person like the face of
Oh,
it.
he was the
But
PR
yeah,
guy.
yeah, exactly. But still, I mean, the effort of, they were co-collaborating, they were working together on something, and I could totally be wrong on this, but for some reason that is coming up in my brain of
Yeah.
like, "Oh, did you know?" Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that later and
I
fact
mean, it
check
makes
this.
sense because like any patent that you see, there's usually more than one person behind it. And
Right. Yes, but then the one
yeah,
person gets all the
it's always
credit.
the face. There's always the face, and they're the ones to get the credit. But yeah, I'll
Yeah.
have to look into that too. I'd like to know who the other person was that helps
Yeah.
with it.
I have a couple questions I wanna go back to.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, you kinda grew up in the community of the church and things like that, and you had all these different people around you. Did it feel like a community for one question, and two, did that community give you the space to kinda test your limits and test, like, I'm going to be goofy around this person. I'm going to be quiet and shy around this person, and then find out, oh, actually, I kind of fall in between where I can be goofy, I can be shy. How was that having such a community? Because that's not something a lot of people get.
Yeah, so it was it was both good and bad. So my life within there, oh man, how do I try to figure out how to answer this question? That's such a good question. Gosh. So there are so many wonderful things that I attribute to growing up within the church. There was a lot of stability there. Sundays were my favorite day of the week. I loved seeing my friends. And my dad's church fell through when I was in about sixth grade, seventh grade, and then we kind of bounced around from church to church. So I became very good at adapting and at making friends very, very quickly. But I think the longest we stayed at any one church was 4 years before something happened and we kind of moved on to another church. So, kind of like the kid that is the military kid that moves around a lot and has to kind of make new friends.
Such a good
Yeah,
skill.
it's a wonderful skill, and I'm very much a chameleon now, and that I can really kind of go in with groups. My husband says that I have the kind of energy that sort of matches a room, so I can very quickly
Yep.
be.
You're very
I'm very
intuitive.
intuitive, yes. But there also was a lot of things internally that I was struggling with, and I had some of my biggest hurts while I was within the church. And I had some of my biggest wounds happen from those kids in the youth group. And the one that I was a part of in high school, you're in high school and you think those friends you're gonna be friends forever. You're like, these are my people. I talk to a couple of them every now and again. We're friends on Facebook. We keep in touch, but they're all kind of on their own journey right now, which looks very different than mine. But really, I don't think I truly felt like I had found my community, because unfortunately, I was also the type of personality that often got edged out. Like when the group
Mm.
was, kind of ready to move on, I was not really invited along with them, for whatever reason. I mean, I don't hold any animosity towards any of them for that. Um, it probably wasn't until I was in my 20s and 30s that I found like my group of people. And a lot of those folks I still talk to today, and I'm still involved with today. So there was so much stability growing up within the church and kind of knowing what my weeks were going to look like. I also, in high school, I just was not into, I played volleyball, but a lot of the girls on my team were really, really popular, and they were doing parties, the kind of parties that rich, popular kids in Virginia
Yeah,
have in high
yeah.
school. And I just wasn't interested
Yeah.
in that. And I was the outsider within that group. And, my volleyball coach even thought that I was depressed because I wouldn't talk to them. And I'm like, dude, I go to church on Sundays. Like, they're out drinking and like hooking up. I'm not, they can do their thing. I'm going to go, like, that's fine. Um,
Right.
so it was just,
Yeah.
yeah, there was just a lot of stability, but there also just was a lot of moments where I still felt very alone because I only saw them. None of them went to my high school because we all were in different high schools. A lot of them went to Chantilly or Centerville, and I was at a new high school that had just been built. So during the week, I didn't really have that connection. So it was both
Yeah.
good and bad in that way. Yeah. So there was pros and cons to it, I would say, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense too, especially the way you described it. It sounds like you had a lot of communities that you were involved
Mhm.
in, but you didn't have a lot of time in one community. Like you went from this community to this community to this community, and to really build good, deep relationships, like spending a lot of quality time with people is the
Yeah.
thing. I love that you said that, and this is something that I think is important, is that like the community that we grow up with doesn't have to be the end all be all community. Like it sounds like you figured out where you fit, where you don't fit, and then you built your own community that feels right and that you're still connected to today.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, my heart now as a mom is for moms. And so I have a community. Obviously, I have kids now. So my community are other moms with kids my age, and we're all kind of going through it together. And we will probably always be going through it together because our kids are within a year or two age difference of each other. So like we're kind of right there. Like one person's coming out of the potty
Yeah.
training stage, and then another person's going into it, and then somebody's having a new baby, and my daughter's turning 2, and it's just kind of, we're all in it together. But I still root for my friends. I still see them on Facebook, and I have lots of friends within the writing community who are empty nesters, or who are 13 or 14 and writing their first book. And it's like we're all celebrating these wins and building this community together. And I know you and I got connected through Threads, and that is another amazing way for people to
Oh
get,
my God, I love
I
threads.
do too, to just get I'm like on my phone every night. But that's just another wonderful way for people to build communities. So I think we do. I think you very much get to choose your community. And if the community that
Yeah.
you're in now is not giving you life, I am just going to say to whoever is listening, you have the permission to leave that community and to go find the
Yeah.
community that is going to build you up. You don't have to stay for whatever reason. You don't have to stay.
Yeah.
And that was,
That's a powerful
yeah,
message.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. One thing I think that you do really well too is you talk a lot about being a mom, but that's not your only identity. Like you are compassionate about motherhood, you are compassionate about, you're a stay-at-home mom, and that's a feat. Like most, or not most, but a lot of stay-at-home moms, like that's their identity. And there's going to be a day when those kids are grown and out of the house, and then I always fear for like what happens to them
Yeah.
at that point, right?
Yeah.
And you finding an identity that is more than just that, but also has space for that too, and is loving and
Mm.
compassionate for that side of yourself. I think I just want to point that out to everyone, because that is such a huge feat and a beautiful thing to do.
Oh, thank you, Randie. That means a lot. It's so easy when you become a mom to get consumed by motherhood and to get consumed by this is who I am now, and to grieve the perceived loss of the person you were before. And I'm not gonna lie, having two little ones, I mean, it is all consuming. It is
It is,
it
yeah.
is
It's like
it
siphons.
is yes, it is 24/7. Like there is it's wonderful. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I am beyond blessed that I get to be home with my children. But I will also be the first person to say, as much of a blessing it is exhausting. And
Yeah.
for me, I had to find myself outside of motherhood. Like I had to figure out, I'm obviously not the person I was before getting married and having kids. I mean, she's still in here, but I can't go back to that. And I don't want to go back to that in no way, shape, or form.
Yes.
I wanna go
Oh
back
my
to that.
gosh. Caitlin, I love that you just said that. I love that, like, okay, I was this beautiful, wonderful person before I had kids. I want to go back to that.
No,
No, you want to grow. You want to become this new thing. Don't ever go back to a shell that you've outgrown.
don't, because if I go back to that, I don't have my husband or my kids. And I'm back to wanting my husband and my kids. Like, back to
Right.
singleness and wanting to be married and having children. So it doesn't make any sense to then go back to that. Do my husband talk and I talk about like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could just like pick up and going on a trip on this weekend? It's like, yeah, that'd be great. We just have two children we have to bring with us. And but
Yeah.
we also know that this time is so like the days feel so long, but the years are so short. I mean, we're
Oh,
celebrating.
yeah. The amount of time that you're raising children, 18 years. Like, I cannot believe my son is 13
Yeah,
years old. That just blows my mind. 5 more years.
right?
I have 5
5 years.
years
And
left.
you can still remember the exact moment he was put into your arms when he gave birth to him, like
Yep.
it happened yesterday.
That feels like
It feels like
yesterday.
yesterday. And then it's literally you do blink and it's you just turn around and all of a sudden they're driving. Like when did that happen?
Yeah.
So our ability to do those things will come back, but if we don't cherish the time and be present now, then we're going to grow up one day and we're going to wish we had been. And it's hard. Like it's really hard to be present in the diaper changes, in the tantrums, in the my son is potty training and so I got to help him to the bathroom every 2 hours otherwise he has an accident. And he's doing great. He's really really doing well, but he's just like we're still in the transition phase and getting them food and help. And it's the minute I sit down, somebody needs something. And so
Mhm.
I'm exhausted by the evening. But if I
Yeah.
don't press into it, and I have to remind myself of this too, that if I don't press into this, I am going to wake up and they're going to be 13 and I'm going to be going, wait, what? Where's my little boy
Yeah.
snuggles? Like I,
Yeah.
and I didn't cherish that time. And so for
Yeah.
any young moms out there, older moms, because there are moms having their first babies in their 40s and even some in their 50s. You know, older moms,
Yep.
just cherish this time that you have with them because you cannot get it back. The things you did before you had kids, you will get back. But
Yes.
the time with your children, you won't get back. And
And I want to point out too, you don't have to cherish it
no,
24/7, right? Like that's not what we're saying. It's not like you have to be in cherish mode 24/7, grateful for everything, grateful for the spills.
grateful for the
Mamas, you can.
vomit. I'm grateful for the
Yeah.
blowouts. No, I'm not at all grateful for
Yep.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told my husband this the other day, and I know the beginning of this sentence is going to possibly irritate some moms. I do not enjoy being a mom in the aspect of being the
Mhm.
chaperone, being the, or not chaperone, the taxi, being the chauffeur, that's the
Yeah.
word I meant. Being the being the maid, being the diaper changer, being the cook. I don't enjoy those things. What I enjoy is watching those little humans figure this world
Yeah.
out. Watching those little humans figure out who they are. That is something that there's no amount of like TV or entertainment or comedy shows that gives me that level of pleasure of like, look at that. Look at that little dude just figured out how to put that star in the correct hole. That is my
That
kid.
is my kid. Or look at I just saw his wheels spin and he just remembered something I told him years ago and he like put it into effect. It's like, oh, I'm actually they do listen. Like,
Yeah,
they
right.
do
Yeah.
they do listen. So yeah, no, I'm with you. The constant, like Saturday mornings are my favorite. We still go to church on Sundays, but Saturday mornings have become one of my favorite days of the week. Selfishly, if I can throw one thing selfishly out there, it's because I don't have to get up and cook breakfast. My husband gets up and does it. It's like the one
Be
day of the
selfish,
week
mama. I love
that
it. Fill your cup
exactly
first.
that like I don't have to jump up and be on right away. But it's the one day of the week that the whole family gets to be together and have breakfast together and we get to actually like we don't have to rush to go anywhere. We get to just take our time. The kids can play. My husband and I can have a conversation. We can have a cup of coffee and it's so it's so life-giving for me to just have that quiet on Saturdays that it's just kind of like we are building we're really building like a castle around that, like a keep around that and high walls to keep that time precious because our whole family needs that. Our kids do so much better when it's the two of us together. And so I totally am on board with you. I don't love every aspect of motherhood, but I love motherhood as a whole, getting to see these children
Yeah.
grow and getting to be like front row center to seeing them become the people that God created them to be and to see them figure out life and each other in that and their space and their bodies and just all of those things like who am I and
Yeah.
we get to see that as moms and it's like it's huge, it's amazing, it's so cool.
Well, I think you actually just talked on the point. So we talked about community earlier, and the way that you just described that, it made me think that if we are not present in our actions with our children and our husbands and our community that we're building at home, we're never going to fully understand what kind of community we want to be
Yeah,
in because we have so much control over the community in our
yeah.
house that we cultivate that energy. We cultivate that community with our children, that connection with our children, that connection with our husbands. If we start there, we learn how to create the community we
Yeah,
want in other
yeah.
places. Like that is the most control and the least amount of control, right?
No.
That we have with producing what we want to see.
And I think that that's the hidden power of motherhood is that you get to cultivate, like you said, the community that you have outdoors starts in the home, and you also are showing your children what kind of community they should then look for. If you're creating a safe, loving, welcoming environment in your home, then when your kids go out into the real world, say they never leave home until college, and something doesn't feel as safe as it is at home, guess what, they're probably going to run the other way. They might be curious and be like what is this, but chances are, if you've built a stability for them that they've had their whole life, they're going to continue to look for that. And they're going to look for people like that for them. A spouse like that who can make them feel safe and loved, and relationships like that. And I think that a lot of moms, we feel very powerless about a lot of things, but we forget that we there's power in motherhood and there's power in raising our children and there's power
So much.
in putting our family first, which is kind of a scary thing for some moms. And yes, you do have to have self-care and have times with putting yourself first, but when you sacrifice for your family, what you build and what you create is so strong. And it's not what society says sacrifice is for your family. It's not what society says that it is. It is powerful and life-giving when you are willing to lay down yourself for others.
Oh my gosh. These conversations are so good. So I want to go back to like you were talking about building this community and
Yeah.
stuff and how moms have all this power, and I agree with you so much. But here's the thing that I really want women to listen to is there is a huge difference in living life and letting life happen to
Yes.
you. And when you are a mother and you have this power, but you have to acknowledge and have the awareness that you have this power, because if you just let life happen to you and your family, the outcome is going to be out of your
Oh yeah.
control. But if you become aware that you have this power, like you've been talking about, the choices that you make them
Mhm.
consciously. Like if you just let your day happen to you and you're like, oh, we watched TV the whole day, the kids were in the other room doing their own thing, that's letting life
Yeah.
happen to you. If you make the choice of like, we're going to watch a movie together, like it doesn't have to be something just off the wall and fancy and
Yeah.
very extravagant. It could just be, let's watch this movie together and have conversations about it. We watched Wild Robot together the other day as a family,
Oh,
and I will say that that was one of the best experiences ever because we laughed so hard through the movie. Then we talked about it for like hours
oh,
after. It was such a great
yeah.
movie. Um, but that's just I know it's sitting at home. I know it's not activity moving our bodies. I know that. But in that moment, we made the choice to do that with our
Yeah.
family. Now, other days, we make the choice to go out and go walking at the park together and catch Pokemon together on Pokemon Go together.
I love
Like
that.
we make conscious
Yeah.
choices, and it shapes the family that you are wanting to
Mhm.
create. So I just wanted to point that out of
Thank
like,
you.
yes, it's powerful, but you have to choose the power. Otherwise, the outcome is not gonna be what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think on the flip side of that too is just taking authority over your family and taking authority over your choices. And one of the best things that I think I have ever done for my kids and for myself is knowing when I screw up, when I yell when I shouldn't have yelled, or I discipline out of frustration, and realizing, oh, I mommy screwed up. And then going to my children and actually apologizing to them and asking for their forgiveness and
Yes.
building that bridge, showing them like mommy is human. Like mommy is a person and she has feelings and she has emotions. And yes, you didn't listen. However, I was not in control of myself, and that was not okay for you. And so I am sorry. Would you please forgive me? And that has created such a safe space in our family where my son, he's 4. I keep saying he's 4 because I just want people to have this in context. He remembers things that he did wrong like 2 years ago, and he'll be like, "Mommy, I'm sorry for the time that I took that toy from Tabitha when she was a month old." And I'm like, "What? Okay, I forgive you. Like it's fine, you know?" And so
Yeah.
he's seen me take ownership of my mistakes, and now he's realizing like, "Oh, I made a mistake and I hurt somebody. I need to go apologize." And he's doing it on his
Yeah.
own. And so it's just, and it's just such a little thing. Like it's not a huge thing. It's just simply going to him and say, "Hey buddy, I messed up. Like today was a really hard day and I'm sorry mommy yelled, and I please forgive me." And that's the power of motherhood, and that's the power of forgiveness healing wounds, because I don't want my kids to grow up. And I had a mother who, she was a wonderful, wonderful woman, but she was very wounded from her family. She was the youngest of 7 and was picked on, 7 girls. She was picked on, combined family. She never apologized. Her apology was always when we'd have a fight, she'd come and she'd ask if we were still friends. And that was her way of
Mm.
saying she was sorry. But she never apologized. And when I became a mom, I didn't want to be that mom. I didn't want to be that
Yeah.
mom that didn't own her crap and didn't say, "Look, I was in the wrong. Like I should not have reacted this way." And
Yeah.
that's not putting anything on my kids or anything like that. Like, yeah, you didn't listen. However, I didn't handle the situation well.
Right.
Um, and I think that even if you have the worst parents in the world, you can still be an amazing parent because you can parent differently. And even if you have the most amazing parents in the world, I guarantee there is something they did as parents that you don't like, that you don't want to do. And so we always learn and we're always growing. And I think that we need to just constantly show our kids that we can grow and we can change and we can put them first.
Yeah. Going back to what you said earlier, you in 10 years, you don't want to be the same person you are right now. You want to outgrow this shell and become something different. Like in 10 years, you don't want to be like, I am the exact same personality. I am the exact same patience level.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. Like you want to constantly
Yeah.
grow. I do want to point out how amazing that is that you doing that with him it's creating this situation to where in the future when he's in a relationship and he does something wrong or he says something inappropriate or hurts his girlfriend's feelings or whatever, he has the tools because he's been modeled to
Mm.
them to be like, hey, I'm taking ownership of this because I watched my mom do it and I know how to do
Yeah.
this. And so that's something that I think is so important, is modeling stuff for your children
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
important.
Just be human around them. Like that's
Yeah.
honestly some of the best advice I can give a mom is just be human, make mistakes, fight with your don't like scream and shout and throw things at your husband, but
Have a
have a
controlled
controlled fight
discussion.
discussion and make up in front of your kids. Tell your husband, I'm
Yes.
sorry, hug him, kiss him, and just let your kids see that because my parents never fought in front of us. And
Right. So you never had those tools of how do I go through an argument? How do I discuss what I'm truly feeling
yeah,
and not keep it inside
and
and
it
have a resolution to where we're not yelling?
absolutely. And I remember growing up thinking, I hear my friends say, "Oh yeah, my parents got in a big fight," and I'm like, "That's weird. My parents never fight. Like they must have a perfect
Yeah.
marriage."
Adults
Adults
fight.
fight, yeah, and so I didn't really have good conflict resolution that I'm still working through, especially with my husband. But I do remember the first time I heard my parents fight behind closed doors, and my mom was a yeller. I thought they were getting divorced. Like I was
Right.
terrified
How
because I'm like,
scary.
I was
Yeah.
I was in my preteens, and I'm like, my parents never fight.
Yeah.
Why are they fighting? What? And I was gripped with so much fear in that, and so that is one thing. Like if my husband and I are like at each other's throats, we're not going to scream in front of each other at our kids because I don't think that's
Yeah.
healthy
Yeah.
either. But
No.
if we're having a disagreement or a conversation that we need to have, we're going to have it in front of our kids.
Yes.
And we'll save the other like harder
I
conversation.
want to point out that moment for your parents too. Like they probably had so much on their shoulders to where, they thought, okay, keeping the fights from you guys is healthy, but they had so much on their shoulders to where they couldn't do that at that
Yeah.
time. And then also added on top of that, now they've scared
Mhm.
you. And so now they have to worry about what
Yeah.
repercussions instead of just from the beginning having these things to where, because like every generation, our parents and we are doing the best
Mhm.
we can with what we
Absolutely.
know. Like the psychological studies, the psychology studies, the growth of children, all of these are getting better and better and better. And in years down the line, it's going to be the same thing. Our grandkids are going to be like, yeah, well, my grandparents, they did it this way and oh my gosh, I'm so traumatized from it. Like we're all just doing
Yeah,
the best we
we
can.
are.
And even if we're like the best parents we can be, we're still going to screw up,
Yeah.
guys. And that's okay.
Yep. Yeah, it is okay. And it's I think the worst thing you can do to yourself is admit that you never are going to mess up as a parent. Like I'm going to be the
Right.
perfect parent. No, honey, you're not. Like that
Yeah.
do not put that on yourself ever as a parent
Yeah.
of assuming you're going to be a perfect parent because then when you do fail and you do mess up, you're going to have all of that guilt of I never wanted to do this. I only wanted to be the perfect parent. And
Well, if you create the identity of a perfect parent and you don't live up to it, there's going to be a conflicting identity
yes,
thing that's happening and the depression can sneak in real
yes, it
quick.
can. Yes, it can. And I can speak from experience. I had postpartum anxiety with Amos and then postpartum depression with Tabitha, and I'm still working through that. the anxiety and the depression are crippling. They're absolutely crippling. There were so many nights that I could not move in bed because I was so terrified. And I just was paralyzed. And so many other nights that my husband, like, I'm in the fetal position just hyperventilating because I'm crying so hard, and he's literally like, I don't know what to do. Like, what
Yeah.
do I like what do I do? And so he would just like hold
Yeah.
me, and I was just a puddle. And then my son would be crying, and I'm like, you just go hold him. And he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, but you need to go to the baby. Like, just
Yeah.
go. And it's just, I think that as mothers, we want to be perfect, and we put that pressure on ourselves. And you got to admit to yourself that you're not, and just continue to try to do the best. And if you screw up, then try to do better next time. And that's really
Yeah.
the best that we can do, honestly.
I want to go back to something because people who listen to this podcast, they know that I've talked about this a couple times. And I also want to show people kind of just modeling to them what it looks like to have disagreeing views on something, but still agreeing to disagree, like as
Yeah.
adults. So you mentioned that your priority list looks different than mine. So I'll tell you mine and then we can kind of discuss
Yeah.
this of like yours and whatnot. But so my priority list, and I always preface this is going to piss some moms off. I am first. I go
Yeah.
first. I fill my own cup up because if I don't have a full cup, I cannot pour my cup and I cannot, give myself to my kids to the level, the capacity that I want to. My husband is next. My husband is next because I with the dynamic duo of us, if we are not on the same page, if we are not this team to where we are just taking life by the horns together, life is just going to bulldoze us through. And that trickles down into our kids. When both of our cups are so full because we focus on ourselves and then we focus on each other, there is no aspect of our children not there's no aspect of our children getting neglected or getting forgotten about or getting overlooked because we have put in the time and work in these other areas. That looks very different from a lot of structures, and I know that. And here's the thing I always want to say: my way doesn't mean you have to do it that way. That's just what works for
Yeah.
us. And I love talking about other people's paths and the way other people do it because that your path might be like, oh, that makes more sense in my situation. So now I want to talk about like, what does your priority list look like? And, how does that work out in the aspect of like what it benefits for you guys?
Yeah. So, I have two priority lists. I have my hopeful list that I'm working towards, and then I have my actual like day-to-day list. So, in the list,
I freaking love that you have the awareness of that. That is beautiful.
so in the list that I'm working towards, it will always be God first. So my desire is to get to the point where the first thing I can do in the morning is open my Bible or sit in prayer or do this or do that. And then it is usually, so that in and of itself helps to fill my cup. So that will help me. And hopefully in those moments, I can also have a cup of coffee. I can eat breakfast. It's quiet. I can have a couple moments to breathe before my kids get up. And then because of the way that our life is structured with my husband leaving for work so early, it's usually the kids. But then in the evenings, I prioritize him in that I always make sure that dinner, and this may piss some moms off, but I like to have dinner ready for my husband when he gets home from work. The kind of relationship that we have is that we're very open with each other. So if it's been a really hard day, like the kids are sick or it's my time of the month or I'm just sick. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I had a ruptured ovarian cyst. So, like, there wasn't a
Dang, those
whole
are
lot. We were in
painful.
the hospital for 10 hours. There wasn't really a whole lot of like time for me to do anything. So that weekend, my husband like took over all of the duties in the house, and he got up
Mm.
with the kids, like everything, so that I could just rest. And he does the same, when Tabitha was born. He takes over a lot of the day-to-day duties and stuff. But for me, in our marriage, I like to make sure that he is taken care of as soon as he gets home. because he goes to work so that I can be home with the kids. So I want to
Yeah.
make sure. And then at night, as much as we can, I try to make sure that he can get the rest that he needs. There are some nights that I'm just exhausted and I'm like, baby, you've got to like do put down for bed tonight. Cause I just can't right now. And he's totally fine with that. So that's sort of like our ideal list of how things will look. And then what my actual day-to-day priority looks like is the kids get up really, really early. They get up far earlier than my brain is ready for. They're usually between like 6:30 and 7, and my brain doesn't actually really turn on even with coffee until like 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm pretty zombified until about 8 o'clock, and then it's like a light switch goes on and we're fine. So
Right. Your internal clock's like, okay, this is the time we
yeah,
should be
so
waking
we're
up.
good to go. So I'll get the kids up. I'll get them breakfast because they're hungry. I mean, they go to bed at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and they get up at 7 o'clock the next morning. So they're ravenous. I get them breakfast. Sometimes I get my cup of coffee. I get them with some toys, and then I get to actually sit down and have some prayer time and some me time. Um, I will admit some mornings are really hard because I'm exhausted. Maybe I didn't sleep well the night. The kids are both like, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And they're in two different directions. And I'm just like, I just want a cup of coffee. Like, literally,
Yeah.
that's all I
Yeah.
want right now. Um,
Yeah.
and they just don't get it, you know? And
Right.
my daughter is she loves like nobody else. I've never experienced a love like hers, but it's very consuming. And so even when I'm praying, like she wants to be on me and she wants to sit on me and I'm like, I
Mhm.
just need like 10 minutes.
Her love language
Her
is
love
touch.
language is touch. And I love that, but it's like if I ask her for 10 minutes, then it's like she gets more clingy because she thinks
Right.
I'm not going to get mommy. She doesn't understand what that means. And
Yeah. And she's 2. I just want everyone
yeah,
to
she's
to
2.
recognize she's
Exactly.
2.
She's 2. And Amos is fine with it. Um, and then usually like rest time, I let the kids take a long rest because they like to play in their room and then they fall asleep. And that actually works really well for our family. Like, and by long rest, I mean 3 to 4 hours. Like they're
Yeah.
upstairs from about 11:30 to 2:30. But that's what works well for us because then I can sit down, I can actually eat a meal without my daughter coming and going, bite, 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 and like
Yep.
grabbing my
Yep.
food or jumping on me. I can drink a cup of coffee that doesn't have a lid on it and that is actually hot. And and that's usually
You haven't baby proofed the heck out of your coffee.
exactly, I have to.
Yeah.
But that's also my time to sit and to write and to get to if I have editing that needs to get done or to watch a show that I want to watch, like, that is not Bluey or VeggieTales or Mickey Mouse.
But I mean, let's all be real. We wanna watch
We
Bluey.
do. I mean, honestly, like when we were pregnant with Amos, my husband binge watched Bluey so that because he
Yep.
never had been around babies
Yep.
and he's like, I need to get some parenting tips. And let's just be real. Bluey
What
is
a
like
great show. Oh
Bluey
my
is
god, I love
Bluey
it.
is amazing. Shout out to the creators of Bluey. All I don't know if any
Yes.
of you watch this podcast, which would be awesome,
Oh my
but
god. Right.
Bluey is incredible. So
Yes.
so that's usually like how my day goes. And then my husband gets home, we have dinner. Sometimes the kids have already eaten because just of their stomachs. And then I get to go upstairs and get a bath. And that's like my
How amazing.
real like self-care time. And my husband doesn't put a timetable on it. Some days I've been up there for an hour and I've fallen asleep in the bath because I'm so tired. And then we get the
Oh
kids
my
into
god.
bed. And so I'm very low on the list right now because just of where we're at, but I'm I'm also recognizing moments where I'm like, I need to take a step away. I need to
Yeah.
go upstairs, put away laundry in the kids' room. I'm even also like some moms may not like this, but I don't always force my kids to clean up their toys because for me, seeing the mess and then organizing it and putting it away calms my brain down.
Self-care,
There.
girl. There you
Yeah.
go. Figure it out. Figure out your system.
And so my husband will sometimes be like, "Well, they got to do it," and I'm like, "They will, they will. They'll know how to put their toys
Right.
away by the time they go to college. It'll be fine." But for
Right.
right now, I have to do this because I'm about to lose my mind, and this is going to bring me down from that ledge. So
That's
you
awesome.
play with the kids over there, and I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna organize this mess of toys and just be in my own world. Um, so yeah, so for right now, I'm pretty low on the list, and but I'm also the kind of person that has never been good at. I'm always going to want to put other people first. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
I love loving on other people. I love the hardest thing for me to answer is when people say, "What do you need?" And I'm like, I don't know. Like I do, but I don't because I don't ever want to be a burden on other people. And so the hardest thing for me to do is to ask for help. But if you need help, I want to be there for you. And I'll do, if I
Yeah.
can't be there, I can say no. Um, but I do know that I have to do certain things for myself to fill my cup to make sure that I'm not angry mommy or stressed mommy or
Right.
sad mommy. And
I love your awareness. First off, I just want to say we all have our two lists. Like even though I just gave you my list, that's my like you said, that's my real list of what I want to
yeah,
be. But the actual list of it looks
yeah,
very different. So I love that you have the awareness of like I have two guys. This is what I'm working for. This is the
yeah,
reality.
yeah, yeah.
I think that's
Thank you.
beautiful. And I think letting people have the space to be authentic and real of like it's not all Instagram posts and the stuff that we share with everyone else.
Uh,
It's dirty, it's gritty, it's real life.
and there are some days that I'm just like, I got no spoons today, guys. So guess what? We're gonna stay in our PJs. You're gonna eat whatever you want to eat, and we're gonna watch TV because I literally have no spoons today, and I
Yeah.
can't. I can't, and I just need to
And
sit.
that's
And that is
okay.
okay because it's not our everyday. Like it's easier in the wintertime because it's crappy outside. I think right now it's snowing
Right.
where we're at and stuff, but it's not our everyday. Like I said earlier, we have a lot of friends in our area with kids our age, so we're usually trying to do a play date once or twice a week. And I do we do meal prepping every week. Well, by meal prepping I mean like I make a list of what we're going to have and then we buy our groceries per week. So like we'll go to
Yeah.
Target or we'll go to Costco and like that's a part of our routine. You know, we have Momco every other Thursday, which is mothers of preschoolers rebranded, and we have church. And so like we're getting out of the house 3 or 4 times a week. And some days by Fridays
Yeah.
I'm like, "You want to sit down and watch me play Kingdom Hearts video games? Great. Let's do that for the day." Like it's fine.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh. And I'm going to just put this out there for you guys, especially our generation. There's a way to use video games. Like I said earlier, Pokemon Go, there's a way to use video games to have
Yeah.
connection, not
My kids
isolation.
are sitting next to me and my son his control he's using the actual controller but it's off. We don't turn it on. So he thinks he's
Yeah.
actually controlling the person on the TV and he loves it. And we
Yeah.
have two games that we play once a week, but also like if I'm at the grocery store and they're having a meltdown, I'm going to give you my phone to play a game on
Yeah.
there because we have to get the groceries done. So I can either sit here and we can all be frustrated, or I can let you guys have a little bit of entertainment time and then we can go home, we can have lunch and we can take a nap. Like
Yeah.
it's it's there's a
Well, I think
there's
I think that the space that like when we check out when we read, when we check out when we write, when we check out, we always the adults have the capacity to do that and do that on
Mhm.
their own. Kids have to be given those
Yes.
checkouts. Like they don't just check out on their own typically. They don't get that quiet my brain and focus on nothing. So allowing them to and giving them
Yeah.
that and teaching them, hey, it's okay to check out for a little bit because that means when we come back to the situation, a lot of times we're not as
Yeah.
overwhelmed. We're not as everything feels like it's spilling out of our head.
Yeah, and I hesitated because there's a strong push these days to not give kids any entertainment, like TV, phone, no nothing, for like the first 18 months. I think I read one survey that said for the first like 4 years of their life.
Yikes.
And while I understand that, and I understand the science behind it, and their brains are developing, and yeah, you don't want to like give them that complete dopamine fix. And we can see it, especially in our son, when he gets a little bit too much TV, then he's just kind of he just can't regulate his emotions.
Yeah.
But it's also choosing your battles. And if you have
Right.
a
And
child,
being aware of your kids.
yes. And if you have a
Yes.
child who is gonna just be a meltdown screaming mess in the grocery store because they're tired, or they're, they didn't get to eat off their favorite plate because kids fixate. It's okay,
Right.
moms and dads, to give them something to distract them so that you can get the things done that you have to do. Because kids don't also
Yeah.
understand time yet. So they don't know, hey, maybe we have a doctor's appointment this afternoon and we have 1 hour to get this done. And this is the only day during the week we have to do it. Like, I got to get you into the store and get you out, and yeah, like I said, we don't do it every single day. I don't like stick my kids in front of the TV and walk
Yeah.
away. But if I'm also in editing mode for my book, like, I have a deadline. And if
Mhm.
I can't get to it where I have to work, I'll take my laptop downstairs and have it in the kitchen and do work while like I'm getting dinner ready. Or, the kids are, sometimes I'll let them watch 30 minutes before rest time while they're eating their lunch. And, so I'll be in there and I'll be typing and I'm trying to get what I can in the cracks. And it's also okay, moms and dads, if you are trying to get healthy and get fit and be working out, to let them watch TV so you can go into another room and have a 30-minute workout with them without them climbing all over you, or cook dinner in silence. We have those
Yeah.
nights too. Like,
Whatever everyone's routines are, as long as there's an awareness of what works, what doesn't work, so let's trial and error and figure out our system. Every household can look
yeah,
different. You can have the kid that doesn't watch TV until they're 4. You can have the family, but that might not work for every
yeah,
kid. That might not work for every home. And I think just getting to the point, I think society just needs to get to the point to where what system works for you, as long as you are aware of the system and the downfalls and the situation of what can come out of it. Do what works for you. Listen to other people's advice. Take what works from you and leave what doesn't.
and show each other grace. That's one of the things too, is not only being willing to show yourself grace, but being willing to show other people grace. If, say, somebody, like you said, their system works for them, if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But that mom or dad that's just trying to figure it out doesn't necessarily need to be shamed for figuring out what works well for
Yeah,
them. And
100%.
I think that's the hardest thing right now in our society, is that everybody has an
Like,
opinion.
they're gonna figure it out. It's gonna fail if it's not
Yeah,
a good system. It's gonna bite them in the butt. Let them figure it out.
exactly. And everybody has an opinion, and that's great, but not everybody needs to express their opinion.
Right.
Especially if they're not
Yeah.
asked.
Well, and I think there's a healthy way to express opinions, um, without being like, you should
Mhm.
do this or I'm
Yeah.
shaming you. I think there's a way to gently express stuff, but also let them don't have the expectation that they're going to do what you
Yeah.
express.
And don't be offended if you give advice, solicited or unsolicited, that's not taken.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
other
That
piece.
should never be an expectation.
Yeah, that's the other piece too, that I found when I became a mom, is everybody has advice, but there are certain personality types that get really offended when you don't take your advice. And sometimes I'm like, but
Mhm.
I didn't ask for your advice. Like, I'm confused. Like, why are you
Right.
mad at me that you gave me advice that you didn't want? And then I just politely said, like, hey, that's great advice, but that's probably not going to work for our family. And then you're mad at me. Like,
Yeah.
it's like weddings and having babies. Everybody comes out of the woodwork with, you should do this. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. No,
No.
thank you.
I'm actually
Yeah,
not. Thank you though.
absolutely.
I love that. I love boundaries is also another favorite topic of mine. I love figuring out boundaries. I love figuring out how to set them in a healthy way. I love that you brought
Mhm.
that up. I do want to talk about, okay, so your book that you've
Mhm.
written, this is a conversation that I'm super
Yeah.
excited to have. So you you have magic in your writing, but you also have themes of God and Christian literature. So I think that there is a very debated subject on like whether or not magic should be involved in anything that revolves around Christian fiction. And what is your take on that?
Yeah, so that is a conversation that has revolved around me since I was a little girl because I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in 85, so I grew up with like Shira and Beastmaster and Thundercats and like Pokemon and Power Rangers and all of these things, but I was a pastor's kid and a believer in God, but I had such a vivid imagination that I would go out like when I was playing by myself and I'd go out in the woods and I'd pretend that I was an elf, and I'd catch fairies and things like that. But it never like got to the point where I ever really believed that I was actually doing those things. And I think that that is really where this discussion within the church starts to split hairs. I think a lot of people who believe that there should be no magic whatsoever within the church kind of come off of the whole sort of Harry Potter phenomenon, where like everybody was reading it, and obviously the books revolve around wizards and witches, and the Bible is very clear about not doing witchcraft and stuff. However, what I like to pull out of my back pocket is C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. They are two of the biggest Christian fantasy writers, and Tolkien's books actually brought C.S. Lewis to Christ. So C.S. Lewis was an atheist, but then he and Tolkien were a part of a group, and Tolkien's writings in the Lord of the Rings, which is a Christian book, has a lot of Christian themes, but the way in which he wrote it, it wasn't like overtly in your face. And even C.S. Lewis's books were a little bit more Christian, a little bit more overt about that, but they still weren't like bashing you over the head with Bible verses, which is another issue I have with some people within the church. Like, don't Bible bomb folks. And that's not something that I want to do in my books. I never want to Bible bomb people, but I want them to get a look at a God who loves and who forgives no matter what you do, and that there is always redemption. And that is a major theme in my books. But I do come back against backlash of you're a pastor's wife and you're a pastor's kid and you have magic in your books. Like the Bible says, well, the Bible actually says to not practice magic and to not be associated with anybody who practices it. So I think that there's a lot of splitting hairs, like I said, because we have a God who created the world and who used his imagination to create this beautiful place. And he gave us an imagination to use. If you look at your kids' imaginative play, like they mimic what's around them. But just because my son is mimicking a train doesn't mean my son thinks he's a train. He knows he's a person.
Yeah.
We play all the time when we go to Target that he's using his magic to open the doors. Like because it's fun and it's him being a kid. But does he actually think that he's a wizard who has magic? No, because we're playing, we're pretending. And
Yeah.
so there is I also just want to say too that I understand where those people are coming from who say that they don't want to open a door. I get that and I completely understand. I had a talk with a friend who became a father not too long ago, and he and his wife were really convicted about this. And I think too, I do want to say that if it is your personal conviction to not read anything with magic in it, that is fine. You need to do that. You need to follow your own personal convictions. I'm not here telling you to not do that. I'm just here trying to show the other side, because when I brought up to him like, hey, that's fine, but if you say no magic, then that also means no Disney movies. That means no, like, C.S. Lewis, no Tolkien. Like, if you're going to take that hard line, there's almost nothing these days that doesn't have some sort of fantastical in it. And
Well, even like I feel like this is magic. Like how is there stuff on here? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like if you're gonna take it away, it's if you're gonna blame and shame other things, there's so what about the things that you enjoy
yeah.
and you actually use?
Well, it's even just like there's so many, video games that you can't even do. And so once you start going down that road, it really is can become a trap for legalism and for fear. Like,
Yeah.
if you are so legalistic on that and so like tightly wound that your kids can never do this when it's a natural just curiosity, then they could completely swing the other way. And so
Yes.
yeah, and because like we have some friends who don't do Santa Claus because they feel like it's kind of a lie to their kids. They're Christian friends. It's kind of a lie to their kids. And
Mhm.
we do Santa Claus because hey, he's everywhere at Christmas time. Like, I don't know how, but I'm also teaching my children that the reason for Christmas is Jesus. And so them watching like Paw Patrol, like, you want to take out magic? Well, they're talking dogs who drive cars. Like, you
Right.
can't even watch Paw Patrol or, like anything on the Disney Channel.
Yeah.
Mario Brothers, like none of that stuff. And so I'm just showing my kids like you can watch stuff and you can enjoy it, but here's the truth. And the truth is this is what the Bible says about it. And I don't mind you using your imagination, but if I start finding tarot cards in our house or I start finding that you're talking to people who are witches, then we're going to have a conversation. um,
Right.
and so in my books, what I try to do is there is magic, but there are two kinds of magic. So there is the magic that was given by the creator in the book in order to basically like to save people and to bring people into the light. And then there's the dark magic from the dark forces, which is just there for evil. And so I try to really, it's an allegory of the book of Revelation, which honestly, if you want to take magic out of things, there's a lot of things in the Bible that you can't read. Like, because there's so many miracles and fantastical things that do read like a fantasy book.
Right. Like the burning bush, like
Exactly.
if that is not magic in itself.
Yeah. I mean, and it's magic can kind of become an all-encompassing word because it's a miracle from the Father and it's divine, but and you see it when when Moses is talking to Pharaoh and the Pharaoh's men are trying to recreate things and they're using magic and it just pales, it falls short. And that's what I'm trying to show in my books is that magic, the dark arts, are evil and lead you into a trap versus the abilities given to these characters by the creator are there to help save and to help remake the world. And that's essentially what Lewis was also doing with Aslan versus the witch. And I just think that it can be such a tool, especially with kids and just their imagination of pointing them towards like, to you this is imaginative play, but look at what God actually created with his divine power. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is a hot
Well,
button
and I
topic
think
within the church.
yeah. Well, I think like kind of like going back to the Bluey thing, right? If we're trying to get messages to children, wrapping it in a way that is more understandable for their
Mhm.
brain is going to sink so much deeper than like here's the Bible, go read this.
Yeah,
Like
even
at their level, at their stage, it needs to be like there's even Bible books that are, specifically for children to consume at a different level of
yeah.
understanding. So that makes total sense. And I like that you are considering, if your consumers are going to be younger, how is your messages going to really affect them and how are you going to deliver that?
And I think that it just comes down to the overall message. Like what, and that's sort of my thing with Harry Potter is like, yes, there is magic in it and witchcraft, but what is the overall message of Harry Potter? And I'm not reading Harry Potter to my 4-year-old, but when he gets to be 11 or 12, like, yeah, we'll read the books together and we'll talk about it, and we'll have, it can just open up so many more conversations to show your kids the truth versus just saying, this is bad, don't do it. Because if your kids are
Yeah.
anything like I was as a kid, the minute somebody said, don't step on the grass, I'm like, oh, here's my toe. It's on the grass. Don't touch the paint.
Yeah.
I'm just going to wipe my hands through it. Like, I was that kid.
Wet
Don't
paint.
tell me no. Don't tell me not to do something, because I want to know why. I can't, like, tell me why. Explain it to me. Just don't tell me no. And as adult, I'm the same. I'm the same
Right.
way. Like, you tell
Yeah.
me no, I can't do this. Well, I want to know why. And if you're not going to tell me why, then I'm
Yeah.
going to go do it.
Right. And that's our literally our like our minds want to know the danger and the depth and the why. And so if we are just told no, that doesn't give us any answers. That means we still have to go through a process. We still have to figure it out because our minds want
Yeah.
understanding. And a no is not an understanding.
It's
That
not.
is a wall.
Yeah. We were meant to be critical thinkers. We were meant to dissect and ask questions. And I think that's why parents have such a hard time with the why stage, because their kids are like
Yeah.
pushing them to think. And my son,
I give you 5 whys and then we're back to the chicken and the
yeah.
egg.
But my son will ask questions and I'll be like, huh, I don't actually know, buddy, but you know what? We should find out together. And like, that's how I'll respond to him versus just, and
Yeah.
then sometimes he's like, why? And honestly, the answer is, well, because mommy said so. Like, well, why can't
Right.
we
And
go?
that's
You
okay.
know, like, why can't we go? Because baby, it's 7 o'clock at night and you got to go to bed. Well, why?
Yeah.
Because it's bedtime.
I just gave you the answer.
Yeah.
Let's go backwards.
Um,
So I have a follow-up
yeah.
question so with your books being in the magical realm and they've got dragons in them, they've got, all this other stuff. Oh, that's going to be your next series, right?
Yes and no. So the third
Okay.
book in the Providence Chronicles series, which is the series that has City of End and then City of Truth is coming out later. And the third book is called City of Rarities. There will be dragons in there, but there will be a twist. So I don't want to
Okay.
give up.
Oh,
My
yeah, yeah.
other series, Aaronborn, will have to do more heavily with magic and dragons, but there will still be a Christian theme to it. So all of the books will
Yeah.
have Christian undertones.
So you're going to have readers come in who are pagan, who are, who do enjoy that kind of stuff, and who are down different paths than you. What is your message to them, and like how do you handle, having a conversation with someone who has different beliefs than you, who is a fan of your work?
I think it's just letting them know that above all else, regardless of the choices that they've made, that I see them and that they're still loved. Acceptance and love are very important to me, and identity is a big theme. Like, the person that we wear on the outside isn't always the person that we are on the inside. And there is a difference between our true identity and our false identity. And that is a major theme within the books. And so my hope with them is that everybody will come to enjoy the books, but overall that the readers will leave the books knowing that no matter the choices they've made in their life, that they are loved and that there is a God, a creator who loves them no matter what they have chosen, no matter what path they have chosen to go down. And I am always open to have conversations with people of different beliefs and faiths. Where I kind of draw the line is when people get rude or combative just because they don't like something, that I've said. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm all for, adult conversations and conversations with people, and I also just love learning people, like what are the choices that, like, what has happened in your life to lead you to this point, and having those conversations. But overall, I just want people to know that, like, that they're seen, that they have value, that they're important. And so I welcome people of different faiths to read my books and to have questions and to have those conversations. That is not something that I would ever be afraid of or would want to shy away from. That's actually kind of something that I've always wanted since starting to write the books, because I don't want to write just for one group of people. Like, yes, they're young adult, but I've had kids as young as 9 read the books and love them, and then I've had people in their 70s read the books and love them. Like, so
I think young adult should be something everyone picks up.
it's
There's so much messages in young
it's
adult
so
books.
good. Like, it's so rich, and I think that as adults, when we get older, there's so much stuff that we have to read that's not fun. Like, why when you're reading for pleasure would you want to pick up a book that's not like fun and in another world and takes you out of this world for a little bit? There's already enough in this world to be worried about. Pick up a book that is easy to read and is not that is going to make you feel like you had fun, feel good at the
Yeah.
end. And that's my hope, is that to write books that everybody can enjoy regardless of what you believe, what you don't believe, your age level, whatever. I love reading for pleasure, and that's what I want to put out. I want to put out books that are fun for people to read and that they'll keep coming back to, that are that
Yeah.
kind of enjoyment that they keep coming back to and they keep wanting to read.
I love that. Gosh, my voice is like going out right now for some reason. So where can people find your books? Where can they find you? Where can they keep up with you on social media and on all of the fun places?
Yeah, so the books are on Amazon. You can look up City of N by Katelyn Pfeiffer, and it's on there. And then I am on Threads as the Providence Chronicles. I am on Instagram as the Providence Chronicles. And it's all one word. And then I'm also on Facebook as the Providence Chronicles as well. You can also, so you can find me through there. And I am, if anybody listening is local to Virginia, I kind of am starting to build a circuit of different places. I'll be at the Big Lit Comic Con at the Dallas Expo Center.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm really
fun.
excited about that because I was a part of the anime club. Thank
Congratulations.
you. I was a part of the anime club in high school growing up, and I've always been a big nerd. So I'm really excited to. I've always wanted to go to a convention, and now I
That's
get
so
my
cool.
chance.
Oh, you love conventions. Yeah, get it, girl.
I'm really excited. I'll have some art that I've created and some other merchandise and stuff. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm around. I'd love to connect with anyone and everyone.
That's so awesome. I feel like okay, I'm gonna be honest, and I'm realizing this happens more and more lately when I have these good questions like this. I have not asked you all of the questions I want to ask you. There is so many more that I've written
Oh,
down as we're going through. So I'm like, okay, Katelyn, we need you back on
I'd love.
because we are running out of time, and I need to ask you more
Yay!
questions.
I would love to come back. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for being on and sharing your story with us. And it was an absolute pleasure just getting to know you and a different side of things. Because as my listeners know, we are two opposite sides of a coin here. And it's still okay to have these conversations and be friends with people who come from very different worlds than you.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want everyone to know that honestly, like, just being on here, being on your podcast is such a gift. And you, Randie, you have such a gift. You have made me feel just like we're sitting across the kitchen table from each other drinking a cup of coffee, which I mean, I have my coffee right here. So we are just sitting here.
I have to drink mine because my throat
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
trash
yeah,
right
yeah.
now for some reason.
But I mean, I would love to come back, and if anybody has any questions and wants to connect with me, I would love to connect with everybody and answer questions. And this was just such a pleasure. This was amazing. This was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was such a good
Yeah,
conversation. I needed
I
this
did
for
too.
sure.
I did too. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katelyn, for being on the show. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of L3. We'll see you on the
Yeah.
next one.
Thank you guys.